Linda Martinez spent her life rescuing dogs that others had given up on. The 62-year-old former veterinary assistant had converted her modest Arizona home into a sanctuary for elderly and special needs dogs, caring for animals that shelters deemed unadoptable. Despite limited resources, Linda had saved over 200 dogs throughout her lifetime, rehabilitating and finding homes for most, while providing hospice care for those who couldn't be placed. Her small ranch on the outskirts of Tucson had become known locally as the Last Chance Ranch, where Linda, with her remarkable intuition for canine behavior, worked miracles with dogs that professional trainers had deemed hopeless. She didn't have formal training or certifications, just a lifetime of experience and an extraordinary connection with troubled animals. For years, Linda had followed the career of Cesar Millan, the world-renowned dog whisperer. She had watched every episode of his shows, read his books, and implemented many of his techniques in her own rehabilitation work. Cesar's philosophy about energy and psychology had transformed her approach to working with traumatized dogs. Though they had never met, Linda considered him a mentor from afar. In early 2023, Linda received devastating news. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer had spread throughout her body. The prognosis was grim. Doctors gave her just months to live. Her immediate concern wasn't for herself, but for the 8 special needs dogs currently in her care. With no family members able to take on these challenging cases, Linda faced the heartbreaking task of finding new homes for her beloved companions before she could no longer care for them. Linda's close friend and local veterinarian, Dr. Sarah Jenkins, helped spread the word about the dogs needing homes. They created social media posts featuring each dog's story, special needs, and personality. The community responded with overwhelming support, and within weeks, 7 of the 8 dogs had been placed in appropriate homes with experienced owners. But one dog remained. Maximus, a 120-pound cane corso with severe anxiety and fear-based aggression towards strangers. Abandoned at a kill shelter after attacking his previous owner, Maximus had been scheduled for euthanasia when Linda intervened 3 years earlier. Through patient work and boundaries, Linda had gained his complete trust, but Maximus remained deeply suspicious of anyone else. His size, breed, and behavioral issues made him virtually unadoptable. As Linda's condition deteriorated, she made a difficult decision. She recorded a series of video messages for friends, family, and the new owners of her rescued dogs. In her weakened state, she spoke from her heart about each animal she had loved, offering advice and sharing memories. Her final video was different, addressed to Cesar Millan himself. Though she had no expectation he would ever see it, Linda wanted to express her gratitude for how his teachings had influenced her work. In the emotional 8-minute message, she explained how his methods had helped her save countless dogs, including Maximus. "I've never met you, Cesar, but you've been with me every day as I've worked with these abandoned souls," she said, her voice thin but determined. "What I couldn't solve on my own, I solved by asking myself, what would Cesar do? Now I'm leaving this world with just one failure. I couldn't help Maximus find a new home, and I'm haunted by what will happen to him after I'm gone." Dr. Jenkins was so moved by the video that she decided to share it on social media, tagging Cesar Millan's official accounts with the caption, "A dying woman's final message to the man who inspired her lifelong mission to save dogs others had given up on." The video quickly gained traction online, with thousands of shares as dog lovers across the country were touched by Linda's story. Local news stations picked it up, featuring segments about her years of rescue work and the uncertain fate of Maximus. 3 weeks later, as Linda's health rapidly declined, she entered hospice care. Her remaining dog Maximus was temporarily staying with Dr. Jenkins, though the arrangement was proving difficult due to his severe trust issues. The massive dog had barely eaten since being separated from Linda, and his anxiety had intensified. On a Wednesday afternoon, Dr. Jenkins received an unexpected call from someone claiming to represent Cesar Millan, stating that he had seen Linda's video and wanted to help. Assuming it was a cruel prank, she nearly hung up until the caller provided details that verified the request was legitimate. Cesar himself had been deeply moved by Linda's story and was flying to Arizona the following day. When Dr. Jenkins told Linda the news during her evening hospice visit, the dying woman initially thought the medication was causing hallucinations. "Cesar is coming here? To see me?" she asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in weeks, Linda's face lit up with something beyond the pain and worry that had become her constant companions. The following afternoon, Nurses helped Linda into a wheelchair in the hospice center's garden area. Though frail and requiring oxygen, she insisted on sitting up properly for this momentous meeting. When a black SUV pulled into the parking lot and Cesar Millan emerged, Linda's hands trembled with emotion. Cesar approached quietly with the calm, assertive energy he was known for. Without words, he knelt beside her wheelchair and took her hands in his. "Linda," he said gently, "I'm honored to meet someone who has done so much for dogs that others forgot." For the next hour, they talked as if they were old friends reuniting. Linda shared stories of her most challenging cases, and Cesar listened intently, occasionally asking questions about her techniques. What struck everyone present was how he treated her not as a dying fan, but as a respected colleague in the work of rehabilitating troubled dogs. "Now," Cesar said finally, "tell me about Maximus." Linda's eyes filled with tears as she described the powerful dog who had become her most loyal companion, explaining his background and the specific triggers for his fear-based aggression. "He's my heart dog, Cesar, the one I couldn't solve completely, and now I'm leaving him behind." Cesar nodded thoughtfully. "Would you allow me to meet him?" Dr. Jenkins arranged for Maximus to be brought to a fenced area adjacent to the hospice center's garden. The massive dog arrived anxious and alert, pulling strongly against his leash as a shelter volunteer struggled to control him. When Maximus spotted Linda, he strained toward her, whining with evident distress at her weakened condition. What happened next astonished everyone present. Cesar asked for the leash and approached Maximus with a calm authority that seemed to immediately capture the dog's attention. Within minutes, using only subtle body language and quiet energy, Cesar had established a connection with the dog that others had spent months trying to build. Linda watched in amazement as Cesar worked with Maximus, demonstrating techniques and explaining his observations aloud for her benefit. "He's not aggressive by nature," Cesar explained. "He's protective and insecure. He needs boundaries and leadership from someone who won't be intimidated by his size." After nearly an hour of working with the dog, Cesar turned to Linda. "I believe I can help him," he said simply, "if you'll trust me with him." Linda's hand flew to her mouth as she realized what he was offering. "You would take him?" Cesar nodded. "Not permanently. I have a network of trained rehabilitators who work with cases like this, but I'll personally oversee his rehabilitation and placement. I promise you, he won't be euthanized, and he won't live in a kennel. We'll find him a home with someone who understands him." For the first time since her diagnosis, Linda wept openly, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief. "I can go in peace now," she whispered. But Cesar wasn't finished. He explained that he had been filming the final season of his latest show and wanted to document Maximus's rehabilitation journey as a special tribute episode. "Your work deserves to be recognized," he told Linda. "Your methods, your compassion. People need to see what one person can accomplish with nothing but dedication and love for animals." In the following days, Cesar's production team interviewed Linda's friends, former adopters, and veterinarians who had worked with her over the years. They gathered photos and videos of the hundreds of dogs she had saved, creating a comprehensive portrait of her lifelong dedication. Cesar visited Linda daily during his week in Arizona, often bringing Maximus, who was already showing remarkable improvement under his guidance. Each day, he demonstrated new progress with the dog and taught Linda techniques she had never considered, treating their sessions as collaborations rather than lessons. On his final day before returning to California, Cesar arrived at the hospice center with news. "We found the perfect home for Maximus," he told Linda, a retired K-9 police officer with experience handling protection breeds. "He lives on 5 fenced acres and works with service dogs for veterans with PTSD." Linda smiled weakly, her condition having deteriorated rapidly in recent days. "That sounds perfect," she whispered. Cesar then revealed something that would become the Unthinkable act referenced in headlines across the country. His foundation was establishing the Linda Martinez Rescue Fund with an initial donation of $50,000. The fund would provide grants to small, independent rescuers working with last chance dogs, cases that most shelters and organizations deemed too difficult or expensive to rehabilitate. "Your work won't end when you leave us," Cesar told her, holding her frail hand. "It will continue through others who share your dedication." 2 days later, Linda Martinez passed away peacefully, knowing that her beloved Maximus would be cared for and that her legacy would continue through Cesar's foundation. At her memorial service the following week, attendees were surprised to see Cesar Millan sitting quietly in the back row, having flown in specifically to pay his respects. The tribute episode, titled Linda's Legacy, aired 3 months later. It began with Maximus's successful placement in his new home and told the story of the remarkable woman who had inspired Cesar with her quiet, dedicated work saving dogs others had abandoned. The episode concluded with an announcement that the Linda Martinez Rescue Fund had already helped save 15 unadoptable dogs through grants to small rescuers nationwide. The story of Cesar's unexpected appearance and his promise to a dying woman touched millions of viewers, bringing attention to the countless unsung heroes working in animal rescue across the country. Applications to the fund poured in, and donations expanded its reach beyond anyone's expectations. 1 year after Linda's passing, Cesar hosted a special event at his dog psychology center, bringing together 20 rescuers who had received grants from the Linda Martinez Fund. Among them was Dr. Jenkins, who had been inspired to continue Linda's work with special needs dogs in Arizona. As the rescuers shared stories and techniques, Maximus made a special appearance with his new owner, now working as a therapy dog for veterans, a transformation that even Cesar admitted had exceeded his expectations. In his closing remarks that day, Cesar reflected on the unexpected friendship that had formed in Linda's final days. "Sometimes the student becomes the teacher," he said. "Linda reminded me why I began this work, not for fame or television, but because every dog deserves a chance, and every person who dedicates their life to giving them that chance deserves our support." The Linda Martinez Rescue Fund continues to grow, becoming one of the most respected grant programs for independent rescuers working with challenging cases. In rescue circles, recipients are affectionately known as Linda's Legacy, ordinary people doing extraordinary work with dogs others have given up on. As for Maximus, the once unadoptable dog now regularly visits hospitals and veteran centers, his calm, gentle demeanor showing no traces of his troubled past. His new owner often tells Linda's story, explaining how a dying woman's love and a dog trainer's compassion changed the course of many lives, both human and canine. In an industry often plagued by competition for limited resources, Linda's story inspired a new wave of collaboration among rescuers, trainers, and veterinarians. Her final message, meant simply as a goodbye to someone she admired from afar, ultimately created a movement that expanded the definition of what makes a dog adoptable and who deserves support in the vital work of saving them. Cesar Millan, for his part, refers to meeting Linda as one of the most profound experiences of his career. "She reminded me that the most important work often happens quietly, without cameras or recognition," he said in a later interview. "Sometimes the greatest dog whisperers are the ones we never hear about until they're gone." The Unthinkable act reported in headlines wasn't just Cesar's financial commitment or his rehabilitation of Maximus. It was his recognition that expertise doesn't always come with certificates or fame. By elevating Linda's work to national attention, he acknowledged the countless unsung heroes who work miracles with abandoned animals every day, often with limited resources and no formal training. Linda's legacy lives on not just through the fund bearing her name, but through the ripple effect of compassion and dedication she inspired. A fitting memorial for a woman who spent her life speaking for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Homeless man asks Cesar Millan for $1. His response is shocking. Miguel Sanchez had been living on the streets of Los Angeles for nearly 3 years. The former construction worker had lost everything after a severe back injury left him unable to work, quickly followed by a divorce that drained his savings. His only companion was a small scruffy terrier mix named Blanco, who had found Miguel one rainy night huddled under a highway overpass. Miguel often went hungry himself to ensure Blanco had food, recognizing that the dog's unwavering loyalty had kept him from giving up entirely. On a warm spring morning in 2023, Miguel sat on a bench near Echo Park Lake, watching a film crew set up nearby. He immediately recognized Cesar Millan, the world-famous dog whisperer, directing the setup. For several hours, Miguel observed as Cesar worked with different dogs and their owners, demonstrating the techniques that had made him a household name. As filming wrapped up and the crew began packing equipment, Miguel found himself drawn toward the area. His stomach growled loudly, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since the previous evening. Without fully understanding his own motivation, he approached Cesar as the trainer walked toward his vehicle. "Excuse me," Miguel said softly in Spanish. "Could you spare $1 for some food? For me and my dog?" The words had tumbled out before Miguel could reconsider, and he immediately felt ashamed. He had never directly asked a stranger for money before, usually preferring to offer some service in exchange for assistance. Cesar stopped, his attention immediately drawn to Blanco, who sat calmly beside his owner. The small dog's demeanor was remarkably balanced, neither fearful nor aggressive, despite the obvious signs that he lived on the streets. "Your dog is very well balanced," Cesar said in Spanish, surprising Miguel by ignoring the request for money. "Many dogs in your situation become protective or anxious. He trusts you completely." "Blanco found me, not the other way around," Miguel replied. "I think he knew I needed him." Cesar studied Miguel with the same attentive gaze he typically reserved for evaluating dogs. "When was the last time you both ate?" "I had some breakfast at the shelter this morning," Miguel answered honestly. "Blanco finished his food last night. I was hoping to find work today to buy more dog food." "I'm not going to give you $1, Cesar said, causing Miguel's heart to sink. But then he continued, "Instead, I'd like to invite you both to join me for a meal, and I have some questions about how you've trained your dog." Minutes later, Miguel found himself sitting in a nearby taco restaurant with Cesar Millan. As they ate, Cesar asked about his life and relationship with Blanco. Miguel explained how the dog had appeared during his darkest moment, when he had contemplated ending his life after losing everything. "He saved my life," Miguel said simply, "so I try to give him the best life I can, even with nothing." Cesar observed how Blanco remained calm and attentive, exhibiting what he called balanced energy, despite his uncertain circumstances. "Your situation is difficult," Cesar acknowledged, "but you've maintained your dignity and calm energy, and your dog reflects that. Many wealthy people with every resource cannot achieve what you have with Blanco." When Miguel shared his background, his immigration from Mexico, his years in construction, and the injury that had derailed his life, Cesar listened attentively. As they finished their meal, Cesar surprised him with an unexpected proposal. "I'm currently filming a new series about unique bonds between dogs and humans in difficult circumstances," Cesar explained. "Your relationship with Blanco is exactly the kind of story I want to tell. Would you be willing to be part of the show?" Miguel was stunned. "Me? But I have nothing to offer." "That's where you're wrong," Cesar replied. "You have something many dog owners never achieve: a perfectly balanced relationship with your dog despite extremely challenging circumstances." Cesar then made an offer that would change Miguel's life. Not only would he be compensated for appearing in the episode, but Cesar would also help him find stable housing and connect him with medical professionals for his back injury. In return, Cesar asked Miguel to consider working with his foundation once he was back on his feet. "Sometimes life takes everything from us to reveal our true purpose," Cesar said. "I believe your purpose involves working with dogs, just as mine does. Why would you do this for a stranger who just asked you for $1? Miguel asked, bewildered. "Many years ago, when I first came to America with nothing, there were people who saw something in me worth investing in. They didn't just give me money, they gave me opportunity. I believe in passing that forward," Cesar explained. "Also, I trust what dogs tell me, and Blanco has told me everything I need to know about your character." The following weeks transformed Miguel's life. With Cesar's support, he moved into a small apartment that allowed pets and began physical therapy for his back. Most importantly, he started learning about dog behavior and training, with Cesar personally mentoring him. The episode featuring Miguel and Blanco aired 3 months later as the season premiere of Cesar's new series. The audience response was overwhelming, with viewers touched by the authentic connection between man and dog, and by Cesar's compassionate intervention. As Miguel's back improved with proper treatment, Cesar offered him a position at his dog psychology center, where Miguel discovered a natural talent for working with traumatized dogs. Animals that had suffered abuse or neglect responded to his gentle approach. Perhaps, as Cesar suggested, because Miguel understood trauma firsthand. Within a year, Miguel had become one of the center's most valued rehabilitation specialists. He and Blanco moved into a small house with a yard, leaving homelessness behind. Miguel often reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had begun with the simple request for a single dollar. Eventually, Miguel launched a nonprofit initiative called Second Chance Paws, which paired homeless individuals with rescue dogs, providing support for both. The program was based on his belief that caring for an animal could provide purpose for people struggling with homelessness, while giving abandoned dogs the love they needed. On the one-year anniversary of their chance meeting, Miguel and Cesar returned to the same taco restaurant. As they reflected on the changes in Miguel's life, Cesar shared something he hadn't previously revealed. "When you approached me that day," he said, "I was actually considering ending my television career. After so many years, I was questioning whether I was still making a real difference or just becoming another celebrity brand." Miguel was surprised. "But your work helps millions of people and dogs. Meeting you and Blanco reminded me why I started this journey, not for fame, but because I believe in the healing power of the connection between humans and dogs." Cesar explained, "You asked me for $1, but you gave me something much more valuable. You renewed my purpose." Today, Miguel Sanchez is no longer defined by what he lost, but by what he found. A new career, renewed purpose, and a platform to help others experiencing the hopelessness he once felt. And it all began with a simple request for $1. Met with a response that recognized the value of human potential and the wisdom of a small street-smart dog named Blanco. The shocking response that made headlines wasn't just Cesar's unexpected generosity, but his ability to see beyond Miguel's circumstances to his untapped potential, recognizing in a homeless man the same innate gifts that had once allowed a young immigrant named Cesar Millan to become the world's most famous dog trainer.